Hare Krishna. Now this sound. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Oh, okay. Hare Krishna. I hope everyone is aware that we're having questions and answers. So, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm ready. Mahaprabhu Kripa Prabhu Shtavidamayata Nachanayam Da Kharasha Nachanayam. All right, devotees. So, here we are, devotees. Thank you very much for gathering, at least as many of you as are here. It seems there's not such a big attendance, at least so far. Maybe it'll build up. So, yeah, questions and answers from chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And surprisingly, we don't have many at all. I only have, I think, 20 or 22 altogether. And we're going to look at these tonight or right now and tomorrow night also. So, there's 22, 10 from the English-speaking devotees, and some 10 or perhaps a little more, maybe 12, from the Russian-speaking devotees. So tonight, I'll try to answer it's 10 from the English-speaking devotees, and tomorrow night, we'll look at the rest. I don't suppose anyone knows if there are more questions coming in. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do right now. So again, thank you for attending. Let us begin by chanting some prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Jatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So yes, Hare Krishna to everyone. I hope you've been finding the seminar interesting. I've been finding it very interesting presenting it. It's really quite amazing, actually. So, like I said, we have about 10 questions. Let's see. We have about 10 questions in English language, so let's get started on them. Question number 1. In verse, or in chapter 2, verse 7, Arjuna, although partially surrendered to Krishna, although partially has surrendered to Krishna. So when in chapter 2, verse 32, Krishna tells Arjuna about how by doing swadharma he can still enjoy, can that be considered a sakam karma yoga instead of karma kandya? Okay. Well, it's an interesting question. If you recall, from verse 31 to, what was it, I think verse 37, might even have been 38, but it was something like that. Lord Krishna presented to Arjuna that you should just fight because you're a Kshatriya. Therefore, you don't even need to think about it, just do it. This is what Kshatriyas do. That any Kshatriya who finds an opportunity to fight just comes to him without him seeking it. Such a Kshatriya is very happy and considers himself fortunate. Yeah. So it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point. Now, the thing is, don't mind me saying it, it's not such a big point, but it's just a little something, let me mention it. It's not actually chapter 2, verse 32, where Lord Krishna presents this. It's actually chapter 2, verse 31. Anyway, that's just sort of by the way. All right. So, yes, so if you remember those verses, maybe I should just remind you by reading. Well, let's just read that verse. Chapter 2, verse 31, why not? It's from that group of verses, so it's very representative. Okay, here we go. Chapter 2, verse 31. And let me read the Sanskrit. Swadharmam api chavekshya navikampitum arhasi dharmyad di yudach trayonyat kshatriyasya navidyate. And just note, please, that this term swadharma appears in this verse 31. It doesn't actually appear in verse 32. Anyway, the translation. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. And so there's no need for hesitation. All right, so the question, let's just understand the question. The first point is that in chapter 2, verse 7, Arjuna has definitely partially surrendered. Yes. Now I'm your disciple. Shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapanam. Means, now I'm your shishya, now I'm your disciple. And I'm surrendering unto you. Tvam prapanam means I'm surrendering to you. So please instruct me. But it's only partial. It's not complete surrender. Yeah, because there's still a whole lot of conversation to go on between Krishna and Arjuna before Arjuna is actually ready to fight, and he really gears up, and then he's ready to fight. So now, in that verse we just read, 31, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that if he does his swadharma, means kshatriya. Dharma, of course, means your natural duty, really, in this sense. Your natural duty, your natural function. And swa means your own. That specific person's, not just in a general sense, but some particular person's natural duty is their swadharma. And for Arjuna, of course, his swadharma was to be a kshatriya, which would naturally have meant here in this situation that he'd have to fight. So our questioner asks then that, so when Krishna tells Arjuna to do his swadharma, that if you do that you can still enjoy, can this be considered sakam karma yoga instead of karma kandya? All right, now sakam karma yoga, of course, we know it means to do your duty, your karma, your natural material duty, but as yoga, as an offering to the Supreme, which ultimately would be the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, but on an immediate level, it might not be Krishna. Yeah, just some linking with the Absolute. So, is what Krishna is telling Arjuna to do your duty as a kshatriya, because then you'll enjoy a big kingdom and so on. Krishna says like that. Is it sakam karma yoga or is it karma kandya? So we explained what is sakam karma yoga. Oh well, sakam means that the person does have material desires. So, or is it karma kandya? Now, the answer to the question is that basically it's pretty clear. It is karma kandya, because the Lord is not advising Arjuna to do his swadharma, his natural material duty as someone who's physically very much and psychologically very much a kshatriya. Krishna's not telling him to do that as an offering to himself, or for that matter, for any sort of spiritual development, actually. He's just telling him just to do it because you're a kshatriya, and kshatriya means part of varnashram. And when in this verse 32 Krishna says there's no better engagement for you other than fighting on religious principles, what Krishna is saying about religious principles is not surrender to himself, to the Lord. It is not doing your duty as an offering to the Supreme Lord. It's just varnashram, because varnashram is a very sacred religious principle. So you're a Kshatriya, that's your dharma. Kshatriya dharma. So you just fight. That's all. So it is clearly karma kandya, because unlike numerous other verses that we've come across, particularly just a little more recently, unlike those verses in which the Lord is telling Arjuna to fight as an offering to me, to fight in a detached spirit, indicating an offering to Krishna and not for yourself. In these verses here, there's no mention of anything like that. It's just Kshatriya dharma, which is a religious principle. Okay, so therefore that's karma kandya. It's not sakam karma yoga. Arjuna hasn't reached that point yet. So then, on to number 2. Is it possible to say that karma yoga is on the level of sadhana bhakti, or are these different things? And what is the difference between a stable level of karma yoga and pure devotional service in this world? Because as I understand, both of these levels involve activities for Krishna. Well, that's a good question. It's definitely a good question. First thing is to understand the main difference between karma yoga and devotional service, bhakti yoga. Karma yoga means, first of all, you do your karma. What is your karma? Your material duty. Material duty. If you try to do something else, something which is not your natural material duty, then there's no question of it being karma yoga. It's just something else. So karma yoga means doing your material duty, and then, and this is another very important point, offering the result to the Lord, or it depends on the type of karma yoga you're doing. There is also impersonal karma yoga, in which you might offer the result just to the Brahman, or maybe the Supersoul, but just sort of to the Absolute in a kind of vague and definitely not like really nicely personal way. So this is karma yoga. Whereas pure devotional service, that's really something else. That means pure devotional service means that you do whatever the Lord wants you to do, and you do it selflessly, just for His pleasure. Not that you just offer the result. Karma yoga includes that you simply offer the result. Your karma you do just because it's your karma, and then you get a result, and you offer that or some part of that to the Lord or to the Absolute. Bhakti yoga means in a mood of love, you'll do anything that Krishna wants, anything He wants, out of love. Not just offer the results, but the whole activity itself is a service to the Lord. In karma yoga, the only real sense of service generally is in the offering of the result. Yes, so a stable level of karma yoga is okay. It's a lot better than being just a materialist. And it may well involve, in fact, you could almost say it will generally involve offering the result to Krishna. Although sometimes it does involve just offering in a less personal way. Pure devotional service is simply for Krishna. And, we read the definition back in Nectar of Devotion, that one must be free from karma. You remember that? Anyabilashita shunyam karma jnanadi jnana karmad yanavritam. Free from materialistic religion. I mean, it's a slightly different sense of the term karma, actually. But free from material religion, meaning a religion which you're doing just on the basis of your bodily nature, the type of body you have. And so pure devotional service must be free from that and unbroken, in a favorable mood, and specifically for Krishna. Okay, so now, third question. Chapter 3, verse 25, says that a spiritually developed person has to still perform his duties, but do it in order to be an example for others. But devotees sometimes say that our primary duty is spiritual practice, and we may not perform all other responsibilities. How to understand this contradiction? Protivorechia. Contradiction. All right, yeah, okay. Well, that's chapter 3. And we did, particularly when we came to chapter 5, we tried to show a distinction between the discussions in chapter 3 and chapter 5, that there are very significant differences. And one of the main, if not the main difference, is that in chapter 3, it's really just an introduction to karma yoga, whereas chapter 5, to a large extent, is advanced karma yoga, very advanced. If you remember verse 18, that the sage sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmin, cow, elephant, dog, and dog-eater outcast. Yeah. So it's really on a higher level than the discussion in chapter 3. So then, so our devotee is saying that we hear that our primary duty is spiritual practice and not getting involved in other things. So how do we understand this contradiction that Krishna is saying that you should, even if you are advanced, you should do like lower duties in order to encourage people who are on lower levels so they can come to higher levels? The thing is this, and this is really the important thing here, is that what the Lord is talking about here, in general, is not pure devotional service. It's really more. Wow, what happened? Krishna. It's really more. It's karma yoga. That's what the chapter is all about. It's all, oops, am I muted? The chapter is all about karma yoga. So therefore, what do we expect but karma yoga and not pure devotional service? And then again, it's karma yoga on a lower level. So, it's kind of, the point about that as devotees, we should try to set good examples as devotees. That's something we can take from this. But otherwise, just the idea of, physical duty, karma, kandya, or varna ashram, setting a nice example of acting according to varna ashram, these sorts of ideas, it's all like lower level karma yoga, basically. Lower level karma yoga. And other than the principle of us as devotees setting good examples as devotees, so people can learn how to become devotees by watching us, other than that, this other point is really, it's not so necessary or relevant for us. We, after all, we are practicing Krishna consciousness according to Lord Chaitanya. We are not following the yoga ladder. We're certainly not following it in any sort of precise sense. We are, like we saw Prabhupada again and again in the purports, again and again. The verses about Ashtanga yoga, you must breathe in this way or sit in that way. And in the purport, Prabhupada may touch on that, but in so many cases, he gives emphasis to bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness, pure devotional service like this, which is the mood of Lord Chaitanya. And by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we do not follow the classic yoga ladder. We don't follow it. By the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we immediately take to bhakti. Immediately. We start chanting Hare Krishna, rendering devotional service, accepting a spiritual master. All these things are there from the beginning, more or less, for us. Because we're not following certain things, even, a not insignificant amount of things from the early chapters of Bhagavad Gita. We're generally not following karma yoga. We're definitely not following Ashtanga yoga. Neither are we following jnana yoga. We are following Krishna consciousness. Whereas in Bhagavad Gita, particularly the first 6 chapters, are talking about these different forms of yoga, and there's just a little reference to the yoga ladder. But for us, we're not going through the yoga ladder. First of all, karma kandya, then karma yoga, and then maybe Ashtanga yoga, or maybe from karma yoga straight to bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga somehow gets in there somewhere. Are we following that? You tell me. Well, I think the answer is obvious. We're not following it specifically, although certainly we can learn a lot from what Krishna says there. So much we can learn. And particularly the way Prabhupada applies practically all the instructions even about Ashtanga Yoga, these other different processes. Even Karma Yoga itself is a different process from Krishna consciousness, but still we can learn from these things. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to number 4. Number 4. Jnana Yoga is situated higher to Karma Yoga on the yoga ladder, yet Karma Yoga is considered as being superior. What is the source of the yoga ladder? And if Karma Yoga is indeed superior, why then is Jnana Yoga situated higher? Well, you know what? We don't so much get into the yoga ladder. Maybe you've noticed Prabhupada has really only mentioned it a little bit in a few places. It's not like every other purport yoga ladder. It's a conception from our previous acharyas. It's a conception from our previous acharyas, and it's more connected with, as I just said, the practice of Krishna consciousness before the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya changed things, at least in terms of priorities and the practical details of the process we're following. So, that's point number 1. Point number 2 is that Jnana Yoga, we see, or what, like Sankhya Yoga, Jnana Yoga, these types of yogas which involve inactivity, and they're just more like mental, intellectual processes. We saw how repeatedly Lord Krishna emphasized Karma Yoga, or acting. Ultimately, of course, Prabhupada would say devotional service, and he did say so many times that Lord Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, they definitely give emphasis to acting and offering the results to the Supreme, or Prabhupada, devotional service. They definitely give emphasis like that, rather than to the analytical type of Jnana Yoga, which was there particularly, we could say, in chapter 2, from verse 11 to verse 30. Of course, those verses are also important, how we're not this body. But just to become preoccupied with that only in philosophical research and arguing in terms of the difference between the soul and the body. How many times did Krishna argue against that? So therefore, the yoga ladder, even though it's interesting in certain respects, at least the sense of progression, that's an important point. That the different yogas are not just independent processes of yoga. There's this one, then there's that one, then there's some other one, and then there's another one, and they just exist independent of each other. What we can learn from the yoga ladder, and it's helpful, is that traditionally all these different processes existed in a type of, in English we would say, continuum. There is a continuous process from one to the next, and ultimately to Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness. They're not just isolated from each other. And you just get into one, and then you stick with that one, and you don't move. Yeah, that's not what the yoga ladder teaches, and it's not what we understand from Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that's sort of the principle. These are some of the principles behind it. But, I can say from my experience in being a student in Bhagavad Gita seminars, like really in-depth seminars, and being involved in discussions with our most senior teachers, Burijan Prabhu, Giriraj Maharaj, and some others, that there are different ways, there are different progressions in different versions. There are different versions of the yoga ladder. It is not hard and fast, except for the first step really being karma kandya, and the last step being bhakti yoga or pure devotional service. Other than those two, there's definitely flexibility. There's definitely flexibility. And I mentioned, I think yesterday, that this week, we've read through chapter 6, and there a person goes from karma yoga into ashtanga yoga, or into it's kind of like a mixed jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga kind of hybrid type of thing, meaning there's definitely a jnana element in what is being suggested in ashtanga yoga. And it is from that, I would say, that this idea may come about that jnana yoga is higher than karma yoga. But it's also true that definitely people can go, and they do go, directly from karma yoga into Krishna consciousness devotional service. They definitely do that. They definitely do that. So, there are different versions, there are different circumstances amongst people which would make one particular approach more practical than another approach in terms of developing your yoga practice and ultimately moving in the direction of Krishna prema, pure devotional service. So therefore, I wouldn't worry about it too much. That's why I have not made like a really big issue about this yoga ladder in this first our studies these weeks, because there's flexibility there. Yeah. So I think that's my answer. I hope that's understandable and acceptable. So number 5, a jnana yogi renounces activity. In the purport to chapter 5, verse 2, Srila Prabhupada states that jnana or knowledge alone is insufficient for liberation, and that there has to be some action and knowledge of being a soul. Okay, well that's exactly what we've been saying. I mean, that's part of what we've been saying. That, it's really been emphasized that a jnana yogi, inactive, simply intellectual, mental, it's going to be difficult. Better to take to karma yoga, at least, and even better to take to actual Krishna consciousness, devotional service. So the question, how then does the jnana yogi attain sayuja mukti given he is renounced and inactive? Sayuja Mukti meaning merging into the Brahmajyoti, the Brahman effulgence. So how does this Jnana Yogi achieve that? Well, good question. That's an important question. And the answer to that is, which we've already mentioned at least twice, is that it is rare that Jnana Yogis or impersonalists, it's very rare that they actually achieve impersonal liberation. It's rare. We did mention at least twice the verse spoken by Lord Brahma in the third chapter or second or third chapter of 10th canto Bhagavatam. Patantyada, these people, they fall down again. The impersonalists, trying for Sayuja Mukti, they fall down again. Now, I don't know what's happening here, but Zoom, it's very unusual for Zoom to crash. But Zoom has just crashed for the second time. And I'm considering whether I should intervene and stop it and restart it myself. Well, let me just read the next question and we'll see if anything changes. Oops, oh, there we are, okay. Okay, I hope you can hear me. Okay, I think you can hear me. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's the internet. In 20 minutes. Well, we'll chant japa after we finish these questions and answers about how the internet will be. It may be okay, it may be on and off, because they're doing special service of the internet service. They're like, I don't know, fixing some things and whatnot. So where are we now? Yes, question 6. We see many personalities mentioned in scriptures having direct relationships with the Lord, like Srila Rupa Goswami with Lord Chaitanya, Mother Yashoda, Arjuna, and the gopis with Krishna, to name a few. So their love for Krishna is so intense. But how can we love Krishna as we have never seen him before? The name of Krishna and Krishna himself are not different, but it is different loving a person who is physically in front of us. How to love Krishna more? Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, that's an interesting question. First of all, we have actually... Oh, you want me to turn off OBS in Zoom? If you can, you're welcome to. I'll turn it off. Well, it's going to complicate matters. Okay, so, all right. So we have stopped OBS. And now, Hare Krishna. Okay, no, I see. I have to. Oh my gosh. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. What is it now? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, oh gosh. You know, I'm sorry, but we have to use OBS, otherwise we have to stop. Oh, well, hang on. No, we can't do it. I'm just going to carry on, I'm afraid. Okay, we have 15 minutes to go. If the conditioned living being acts and desires under the guidance of material nature and entangles himself, well, hang on, no, I didn't answer 6, did we? The thing is, Krishna is here. Krishna's here on the altar. He's speaking to us in Bhagavad Gita. We can pick up Bhagavad Gita anytime 24/7, and Krishna will immediately speak to us. So it's not so distant as you might think. It's not so distant. And the more we really serve Krishna, and the more we really try to please him, and like that, chant his names, the more he will reveal himself to us. Yeah. The more he will reveal himself to us. If the conditioned living being acts and desires under the guidance of material nature and entangles itself in material activity, what is the chance that in the heart there will develop a desire to realize oneself as a soul and to be freed? And what is the reason for this happening? So what is if we're really entangled, we've been in this world so long and all that, then what likelihood is there that a desire will develop in our hearts to realize our spiritual nature and become Krishna conscious? How could it happen? Can you see how Zoom is? Are you able to? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what the chance is. The possibility is the root of it, or the foundation of it, is mercy. Mercy from Krishna, mercy from Srila Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya, mercy coming through the spiritual master. Otherwise, there's no chance. Without that mercy, we'll just remain in ignorance, and everything will just be a bit of a disaster, I'm afraid. It really will. So mercy is the key in that sense. Therefore, we really have to pray for mercy and try to get the mercy. And also try hard to serve nicely and chant nicely and so on. So here now, question 8. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 1, it's mentioned that Lord Krishna instructed the sun god Vivasvan in the knowledge of the Gita. Does that mean some kind of similar battle happened there at that time, like in Kurukshetra? No. Actually, we don't know exactly what did happen. There is no mention, except that the Lord instructed Vivasvan in Bhagavad Gita. That we know. That we definitely know. So, there may have been, but there was not necessarily some great crisis, like the Battle of Kurukshetra, huge crisis for the whole world, even for the whole universe, actually. But we're not aware of there being something like that. Okay, now question number 9. When we were discussing about chapter 4, we mentioned that service is absolute. And when service is accepted by the Lord, then everything is complete. So the question is, how do we know if Krishna is accepting our services? Well, basically, if the spiritual master is happy with your service, Krishna's happy. If the authorities, like the temple authorities or yatra authorities, if they're happy with your service, then you can take it Krishna's happy. And even if just the devotees in general are happy with your service, then at least in many cases, that will indicate Krishna's happy. Yeah. So in other words, through seeing the reactions of the devotees, particularly the spiritual master, then the senior devotees, and then, maybe to a lesser degree, just the regular devotees, then we can be sure Krishna's not just accepting. Krishna is accepting, but he's pleased. So now, last question. At the time of death, the soul leaves the body to take another body. How long does it take to receive your next body? To receive. Periselitsa Vadrugoya Tiala. Periselitsa. Yeah, to receive, to get. That's the idea. Your next body. Well, we can give you an answer certainly in a general sense. The answer in that sense is, it depends on how different the new body, the next body, is going to be compared to the body you've just had, just right up till now. And if your next body, like if you've lived a very sinful life and you're going to go down to the animal species or something drastic like that, then it'll take a longer time before you actually get that next body, because you have to be prepared. They have to get you ready so you can enter that next body and be completely comfortable in it. This is the idea, that you get trained up so that when you enter your next body, it's just like, this is me. This is where I belong. I'm in the right place. Not like, what sort of body have I got now? I can't live like this. Not like that. So if the next body is going to be very similar, then the training period will be much less, or there may hardly be any. But if your next body is going to be something just really kind of way out, then, it'll take time to train you to the point that you feel, yes, this is me. You know, from human being down to a dog, to come to that consciousness like a dog, so that when you actually enter the body of the dog, you just feel fine. You're ready for it. You're happy to have it. That'll take a lot of preparation. All right. So those are the questions that we're going to look at tonight. And we will continue tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We're sorry about having to change the program today, but we thought it was the best thing to do, because from 6, the internet may go off and on. It may just go completely off. It's gone. Zoom has gone completely off. Oh, it's been ended. All right. So much for that. Anyway, for those who want, my intention is to chant japa. How was it? Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, go ahead. It went off a few times, like Zoom just disappeared. Suddenly it was not there.
The video?
Yeah.
But the broadcast was gone?
No, it wasn't. Oh, yeah. Well, OBS was still showing.
But Mahaprabhu didn't go.
He did. He sent a message. Well, he just sent a message here. But I saw that suddenly Zoom is no longer here. He blamed it on OBS, and he asked me to turn it off. So I did, but then nothing would work.
Oh, Zoom wouldn't pick up the camera.
Yeah, Zoom wouldn't pick up the camera. Wouldn't pick up the built-in camera either.
Oh.
I mean, if I maybe restarted the computer, it would have been okay.
Stop streaming.